Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. It's the end of May, almost Memorial Day. You'd think that there's nothing going on. We'd have nothing to talk about. And then I almost had to cut down the show because there was so much going on, Shane. First of all, before we go any further, you and I had a chance, this will be segment 2, to sit down last night with Ignacio Rissotto, who is a draft analyst, and he's an analyst with foreign basketball players. He knows his stuff. Yep. You guys are going to really enjoy that interview in the second segment. But first, Shane, I mean, I'll tell you what, between basketball scheduling, rumors, baseball, Pac-12 mess with ESPN, does it stop?
Well, in a former life, Eric, I used to work in the TV news business on the sports side of things at ABC 15, and the kiss of death was always, it looks like it's going to be a slow sports day, because something always happened. As soon as we said that, there's a trade or a firing or some off-field, off-court nonsense or something. So now we never had a shortage of things to talk about, in the offseason, whether our first year, it was all the firings and new hires, and we got the Pac-12 deal. We've got, unfortunately, some off-field stuff we talked about a couple of weeks ago. And of course, with the transfer portal now, everything is very fluid in the men's basketball and women's basketball situation up until after the NBA draft. So that creates a lot more opportunities for us to talk about stuff. And Ignacio is you're going to enjoy the interview. You're going to learn a lot. We learned a lot too.
Yeah, great intel, you guys. As Shane said, and I said, this one is very informative. You're going to find out about Krivas and the other Lithuanian kid, Murauskas. Thank you. Yes, I'm very,
Krivas and Murauskas and Krivas. Yes,
we're gonna find out. And I asked him how those guys compare to Henri Veesaar from last year, just kind of as relative expectations. So we'll find out about that. But first, Shane, let's get right into it. It is Buy or Sell, presented by our friends at Ice Shaker. You can see the Ice Shaker if you're watching on the YouTube in Shane's hand and behind him, and couple behind me on my bookshelf. Go to iceshaker.com and use promo code Wildcat Country, capital W, capital C, to get $5 off, or go to fanatics.com and get your Ice Shaker. They will come in handy during your Arizona summer. All right, Shane, number one, let's start with football this week. With the addition of wide receiver Montana Lemonious-Craig, Arizona has its most potent offense on paper in the last 25 years. Basically, Shane, there are no excuses for it to fail. Buy or sell.
Well, let me step back for just a second and just appreciate, because you know how many offers this guy got as soon as he announced he was transferring from Colorado? Like, so many D1 offers.
So good, yeah.
And you think about where Arizona was 3 years ago, and the only guys Arizona was getting were guys where Arizona was their only Power 5 offer. It was Arizona or Mountain West or the MAC or something like that. And now Jedd Fisch is winning these kinds of battles, and if he's not winning, he's in the mix at the very end. And the coaching staff as well. They play a big part, obviously. So I want to just take time to appreciate that just complete 180 from a couple of years ago. When I saw this question, Eric, my first reaction was, Eric with his hyperbole going over the top again. The most talented offense in 25 years, they can't be. And I thought about it, and there's a case. There's definitely a case. I think back to 2009, Nick Foles' first season as a starter at Arizona. He didn't start the season as the starter. Matt Scott did. But that was a great offense. But if they had Rob Gronkowski healthy on top of that,
correct,
then that I think would be number one, and that you could have been looking at a Rose Bowl team that year. So maybe I think you could say it's certainly the most well-rounded. You look at Jaden Delore, who I know we're going to talk about the quarterback situation in a little while. Michael Wiley coming back. They have they're so deep at running back, it's absurd. And Michael Wiley, I saw this stat. I want to get it right. He's number one in yards per attempt when not contacted in the backfield last season.
Interesting.
9 yards per attempt in that situation. So you get some good blocking for him, and bringing Jordan Morgan back. It's definitely going to be big. But you get Jonah Coleman coming back, Speedy Luke. Hopefully we'll get in the mix a little more. And they're deeper than that as well. The wide receiver side signing this past week, Cowing, McMillan apparently T-Mac has put on some weight, and he's going to be a bigger force next season for sure. The tight end room is Tanner McLaughlin's great, and they have some depth beyond that.
Kean Burnett, don't forget about Kean Burnett.
Who we've Wildcat Country guest Kean Burnett, who didn't make much of an impact last season, but I think that's largely because of what McLaughlin did. It's the most well-rounded, certainly. to me, I mentioned this before, and I mentioned this before the off-field stuff with Jaden Delore, but he's my biggest question. Is he going to take that leap forward? And I think a lot of it has to do with the emotional aspect with him. Of course, there's also the question, will he remain on the team? I think he probably will. But assuming that he's still there, will he continue? Will he let his emotions get the best of him because he's an emotional guy? We saw what happened with him and Dorian Singer toward the end of last season. But I will buy that they have the potential to be. I guess I'm hedging a little bit, but they do have the potential.
Listen, I'm not expecting them to score necessarily as many as we saw during the Rich Rodriguez days because, Rich Rod's offense was a different animal. His defense was also a different animal, which was really bad. As far as on paper goes, I mean, Arizona's wide receiver room is top 5 in the country. You can't. Cowing's a preseason All-American candidate. T-Mac is eventually, could be an All-American one day. And Lemonious-Craig is a pretty darn good player. So and not to mention Kevin Green, and there's probably other guys that we're not even. I mean, this is as deep a unit as Arizona has ever had.
If I had one criticism of the wide receiver room, it was that lack of depth. You had those 3 great guys, and then like a lot of times you look at the box score, those 3 guys and McLaughlin, maybe one of the running backs, would be the only guys who would catch passes. So that wasn't necessarily a problem. I'm just saying that after those top 3 last year, you had a bit of a drop off. So I'd like to see a little more depth this season. I know I'm sounding greedy because of where this team was at 2 years ago, but I think that's a reasonable request.
I believe Arizona, we know that Washington, USC, and Oregon probably will have in some order the top 3 offenses in the Pac-12. I don't see why Arizona should not be top half. And I could make an argument without knowing other teams' rosters all that well that Arizona has the 4th most talented offense in the conference. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the third segment with quarterbacks. But, I mean, this is really exciting. I'm stoked. I just, as a side note, I just moved my tickets to the north end zone. I'm getting old. I need a seat back here. You
need a seat back here. No more aluminum slabs for you.
Yeah, no, thank you. You turn 40 and you need a seat back. That's the way I look at it. But I expect to be seeing a lot of scoring in that north end zone from Arizona and hopefully not as much from the opponents. But I'm really excited about that. So great addition by Jed Fish in Montana Lemonious-Craig. All right, number 2, let's switch over to basketball because the other big note of the week, we talked about Keshad Johnson last week, and he committed the next day on Saturday. That's great. We're excited about that. So I noticed that there was a Twitter exchange back and forth between you and one Frank Kaminsky after it was announced that Arizona has added Wisconsin to its non-conference schedule next year, which features Duke on the road, Michigan State in Palm Springs, Wisconsin at home, and Alabama in Phoenix. And potentially, the rumor has it, that there's another marquee game that's going to be announced. This is a bad thing for Arizona next year with the roster uncertainty. Buy or sell?
Well, first of all, you think I hurt Frank's feelings? I didn't.
Yes. Okay. You told him he didn't play in the NBA Finals, Shane.
Because he didn't. He did. I was at Game 5.
Be nice to him.
I'm a. Look, in my Twitter bio, I mentioned extremely bitter Arizona sports fan, and that includes U of A basketball and the Suns. And
fair.
Frank Kaminsky, he beats my Wildcats, and then the least he can do is make up for it by helping the Suns win a championship. And then he doesn't.
Be nice.
I don't want to be nice. I know. I need to set an example for my son. Whatever.
Yeah, set an example for your son.
All right. I'm sorry, Frank. I'm sorry. I don't think he can.
If he's listening, which I'm
sure he is. I'm sure he's. I'm sure this is on his.
I'll put that in the Twitter description. Shane apologized to Frank Kaminsky, and we'll see what happens.
Okay. Yeah,
I won't do that. I'm kidding.
I'm sure that means a lot to him. We've had this discussion before, Eric. I'm a big fan of Lute Olson's scheduling back in the day of scheduling a murderer's row of opponents. I think it's a good thing regardless of how good your team is. I think it can only make your team better. Look, if they get their butt kicked a couple times, so what? They get humbled. They realize they got work to do. They'll come together. I don't have a problem with that. I think, look, I don't know if there's a correlation, but I would rather them lose a couple of those games or most of those games and come together late in the season and put it all together in the tournament than the other way around. So I don't know if the past 2 teams have gotten Tommy Lloyd's first 2 teams have gotten too arrogant in that regard or whatever. Maybe they thought they arrived a little too soon. But no, I think it's a good thing to have that kind of competition. It for better or worse exposes some of the things you need to work on, even if you win those games. So no, I'm all for it. And look, if nothing else, it's not going to hurt their net ranking going into Selection Sunday.
No, but An 0-4 would be disastrous. I mean, Arizona's got to. It would. I mean, it doesn't matter who you play. If you're not beating them, it doesn't matter. I don't care. And now here's the one thing that's a little bit different, and the reason I'm going to say it's not a bad thing. So we saw Arizona kind of. I mean, they played decent non-conference schedules with the preseason tournaments that they've won in the first 2 years of the Tommy Lloyd era, and we got our hopes up heading into the Pac-12 tournament, which they won both years. And then you go to the tournament and they just aren't great, especially this year, getting embarrassed by Princeton in the second half, essentially.
Yeah.
You can't go 0-4. You have to 2-2. I'm fine with. You're probably not beating Duke. And Michigan State, Wisconsin, Alabama, all those games are played within a 150-mile radius generally, or 200-mile radius of Tucson, including one of them in Tucson. Yeah, you gotta win 2 out of 3 of those, in my opinion.
Well, in Wisconsin, they didn't even make the tournament last season, I don't think.
No, they made the NIT semifinals.
Yeah, they weren't very good. But let's play a game of Would You Rather, Eric.
Okay.
Would you rather go, say, 12-1 in non-conference play, but play a sub 100 strength of schedule, or go, say, 8-5 and play the top 20 strength of schedule?
Who are your wins?
Say Arizona wins 1 of the 4, and then they win all the rest except 1.
Did they get blown out in the other 3?
What does it matter? In terms of net rankings, it doesn't matter.
No, but I'm talking about, it's not all about net rankings to me. It's about, how does this team look? If they go and lose to Duke by 2, or they lose to Duke by 5, you're like, okay, like, I get it. If they lose by 20, I'm going, this is a problem. But
here's the thing, Eric. I don't think, even if this team ends up being very good, and which they certainly have the capability of being, especially if they land Caleb Love, which I know he's rumored to be, Arizona's rumored to be a finalist with him. Yeah. But even if they're very good, they might not come together right away. That they're a very different looking team. And I know that's kind of the norm now in college hoops with all the transfers, but they are exceptionally different looking compared. Kirk Creeks is not there to run the offense anymore. Julius Tubelis, their leading scorer, is very, very likely gone, and they have a lot of turnover. And so even if they end up being a tournament team, end up winning the Pac-12 or finishing a close second, they may struggle out of the gate. And I'd rather that loss come to someone like Duke than a weak non-conference opponent.
I think it's how they play. When you look at Tommy Lloyd's teams, for the most part, they have not been blown out.
Yeah.
In their losses. I mean, there's the
couple of exceptions, but yeah.
But like, the Wisconsin game's a must win. It's at home. You have to win that game. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Alabama game, the games in Phoenix, the Michigan State game. I mean, those are probably 2 top 15 teams. Yeah. I think you got to split one of those. Just my opinion. Great to schedule these teams. Doesn't matter if you look bad against them. It's more, does more harm than good, in my opinion, if you get blown out. Now, we don't know until the actual games are played, but this is a common theme that we'll be discussing. I admire Tommy for putting together a nice schedule.
Love it.
I mean, the games we're going to be talking about this during football season for sure with all these impressive games. I'm a little concerned, though, not going to lie. All right. Number 3. So there are rumors, Shane, about it was an article on 24/7 Sports today on Wednesday that Caleb Love, who was North Carolina's point guard when they made the championship game the other year, is transferring out. He committed to Michigan. Then something didn't work out there, maybe academics. Yeah. And now he's down to generally Arizona, Texas, Gonzaga, and maybe Creighton are in the mix. If Caleb Love were to come to Arizona, here's the thing. He's like a better Kirk Kriisa. The shooting is what it is. Yeah. He can be a hero or a zero. Buy or sell. Caleb Love coming to Arizona would be amazing for this roster.
I will sell that it will be amazing. I would buy that he would certainly be an asset and add depth, whether he's a starter or gets significant minutes off the bench. My concern is, I definitely take him if he wants to come for sure. You take him and Jaden Bradley. You have combined a pretty, as we say in the corporate world, opportunities in the field goal department. Yep. Neither guy has been a good shooter. That could change. Especially Jaden Bradley, who's still very young. I think he can be much better. But like Cotton Fitzsimmons always used to say, you could never have enough shooters. But are these guys shooters? Are they shooters at the collegiate level? But Arizona needs to. I think they really need to add at least one more strong guard, one guy who can.
Well, he's a scorer. Caleb's a scorer, but his his field goal percentage isn't good, and he plays a lot of hero ball. Yeah. A cool angle about this, though, Shane, that Arizona plays at Duke. if there's probably one player in college basketball right now that's hated more by Duke fans, I can't think of one other than Caleb Love. So if I were him, I'd consider that. The other thing that you have to think about, you have Boswell, who's a traditional point guard, Bradley, who's a hybrid point guard, shooting guard, and then you'd have Love, who's the same thing. You'd have a 3-guard lineup, which would be potent. I mean, Arizona's ball handling would not be a problem.
You think all those guys would start?
Oh, yeah, you bet. Caleb Love's not coming to Arizona, and Bradley's not coming to Arizona to sit on the bench. I think Pelle Larsson is a great sixth man and replaces one of those, and then you rotate him in. You probably have, 2 of those guys in the game at once, but I think all 3 of them would start.
That's fair. Yeah, I think, I have to imagine that Caleb Love and Jaden, Caleb Love especially, Jaden Bradley, I know, like someone on YouTube said, Shane, Jaden Bradley's starting next season, and he probably is. Yeah. But I don't know if it's a given. But yeah, you probably find a way to start those 3 guys, and then Johnson and Balo, and then bring Pelle Larsson off the bench, and then the 2 Lithuanian guys, and that's a
top 15 lineup right there. Maybe, I'll tell you that.
Maybe if at least one of the European guys, and I'm including Henri Veesaar in that discussion, ends up being a significant contributor next season, then the top 25. I don't know about top 15.
Oh, no. If you get Caleb Love, you are a top 15 team. You got KJ Lewis, another guy off the bench who should contribute as a 2-guard. Pella. I think obviously the big men, if as you said, if you get one of those guys that can make an impact plus Veesaar, you can go 8 deep. I don't expect much from Borovichinen. Who knows what to expect. Veesaar will play. I mean, he's 7 foot whatever. He's gonna be in the game as a big body who's taking fouls and he can defend.
You've had Karnowski working with the big guys, presumably. So hopefully that'll help as well. Yeah.
All right, number 4, Shane. The Pac-12 has no chance of survival if the rumors are true that ESPN being in discussions with the conference, they're not being with. Basically, if ESPN's out, the conference is dead. Buy or sell.
I'm going to sell that they're dead. I think they should be. I kind of wish they would be. I don't. Well, and I don't know why ESPN would get involved in this point. I mean, how would the Pac-12 go from allegedly the CW back to ESPN? I don't understand. And I'm not the foremost expert by any means on the TV deal, so I feel a little underqualified to comment too much about this. But I feel like the Pac-12 is intent and adamant at this point in surviving one way or another. So I think that I don't think they're dead, or at least put it this way, I don't think they realize they're dead. No. I think I would like to see Arizona and ASU and the mountain schools splinter off and join the Big 12. But I don't think this is it's kind of like the Coyote situation in Arizona. They keep finding a way to stick around for whatever reason. I feel like the Pac-12 may be stubborn and continue to survive one way or the other.
If you are not on a major TV network, if you don't have a deal with CBS, NBC, Fox, or ESPN, your conference is dead. Yeah. I mean, you're the MAC. But even the MAC has an ESPN deal and a CBS deal.
Everyone loves some action on a Thursday, right?
Well, I mean, literally, if you have nothing, I mean, heck, at this point, does the Pac-12 settle for a CBS Sports Network deal with an occasional game on?
Or streaming on Apple or like...
I mean, it's a disaster. Arizona has to get out of this conference. You know what? We're going to go back and forth with this. But if ESPN is truly out and wants no part of the conference, we'll see if those rumors are true or not. One other thing, Shane, not necessarily a buy or sell question, but Larry Scott apparently left a $50 million overpayment to Comcast and now a $10 million expense on the old lease in San Francisco. So these schools are like, this conference is not good. So Colorado is rumored. There's some rumors out there lately that they're going to be the first school to jump. If they jump, do you think that others will follow, or do you think Colorado would go solo?
I think the dominoes would have to follow at that point. I mean, what would you do? I mean, if the goal is to, or the plan as of now is to add 2 schools to replace UCLA and USC, even if they're San Diego State and I don't know, SMU, whoever, then I could see them trying to survive. But then if another school jumps, I can't imagine Colorado would be the only one. I think, and I admittedly hope that Arizona would follow, and probably ASU and Utah would as well if they have that opportunity.
I'll tell you though, Shane, I think ASU and Utah are digging their heels in, and I have no problem if Colorado and Arizona go and ASU and Utah stay behind. And Arizona's going to play ASU every year in all likelihood. It's good. It's good for everybody.
You would think, but some of these rivalries are gone by the wayside. Like Oklahoma, OK State, that's not going to continue. And
I mean, that's and Texas A&M, which will be brought back in the SEC. But I would think they would. I think the Board of Regents would find a way to keep these two schools.
Well, a lot of schools have. Clemson and South Carolina, they play. Utah and BYU do every year. Iowa.
Well, most every year. Not. I don't think they played last year.
No, you're right. But most every year. But so that does happen. But I'm just saying it's not a given. Don't just assume that's going to happen. It should. I mean, we got the 100th territorial cup game coming up in just a few years. So hopefully we get there. But I imagine that wherever Arizona goes, ASU will follow, or vice versa.
We're going to find out generally by, I think, July 1st is a deadline to look at. That San Diego State's, if they were to leave the Mountain West after that, I think their goodbye payment is like 4 times what it is now. So keep an eye on that, that date. But I think we're going to see something in June, one way or the other. We're going to know either this conference is staying together or they're going. I don't think it'll linger much beyond that. So
is that officially, Eric? Is it called a goodbye payment? Is that the official?
I would have to.
I really hope it is, because I really like that.
I believe there's other terminology for that. I guess we'll find out about that. All right. Coming up next, Ignacio Rissotto, foreign basketball expert, draft expert. I don't know what to call him. He's just really smart. You'll enjoy the interview as well here in Wildcat Country.
What's up, Wildcat Country? It's Robbie G, baby, and I am gearing up for a big year with Coach Jetfish and excited to see what the Arizona Wildcats do this football season. And just like the football team, we stepped up our program as well with the official licensed U of A Ice Shaker, baby. Check it out and get it at fanatics.com. Bear down, Arizona. Let's go.
Shane, yet another newcomer to Wildcat Country, and this is a really good one that we have here. Ignacio Rissotto, who is a scout for Pro Insight and Draft Digest. You can find him on Twitter at EYREBall. And Ignacio knows foreign prospects better than just about anybody better than anybody we've ever talked to on this program. So we're really excited to be able to talk to you. We really are glad to have you. So Arizona got a couple of guys in Krivas and Murauskas, I believe his name is. So just first of all, overarching question. Did Tommy Lloyd get it right in finding these two guys out of Europe? Are these Arizona quality players, in your opinion?
Well, first off, thank you so much for the invite and for the warm reception and the kind words. Definitely. And the answer to the question is, for me, is definitely. In the case of Murauskas, I thought Murauskas was going into the draft this year. I certainly thought that he had, the type of performance this year in the Lithuanian league as an 18-year-old. He was born in 2004, and he had a production for Žalgiris, which is probably the main team in Lithuania. I thought he had the type of production where he wouldn't necessarily get drafted this year, but he would go through the draft process, going to maybe one of the combines and meeting the teams and etc. And so once he didn't, write his name in the draft, I thought it was weird. I even tweeted that he was one of the guys to watch for next year. And I started hearing whispers about him coming over and going to the NCAA, and of course he ends up in Arizona. For me, Murauskas is definitely a future NBA caliber guy. Offensively, defensively, some things he still needs to, work on, but definitely I think he has the offensive potential to be an NBA player. And with Krivas, he spent most of the season with the second team of Žalgiris in Lithuania, and even though he's a bit of an older prospect, he's born 2003. He has the size and the mobility and the production as well from the center position to where I really think that he will translate. Maybe not from like day one, but I can see him by the back end of his freshman year, like being a productive player, just because of that combination of size and mobility is not something that you can find everywhere. So yeah, for me, he definitely got it right with two players that have not only impact in year one, but can have long-lasting impact for year 2, year 3, year 4.
Okay, yeah, and Ignacio, I read what you wrote about Murauskas and his potential to play in the NBA from the story that you linked in from December. You said he's 6'8", has long arms, he's a great shooter, which our Bruce Pascoe, our friend last week, mentioned as well. You said he's developed very well off the ball. You said he might have trouble creating his own shot due to a lack of a quick first step, over reliance on converting tough shots against contact. Has he? That was 5 months ago. Has he improved in that area? And how do you think that's going to translate to the college game?
I think let's remember that again he plays for one of the main teams in Lithuania, and unlike domestic prospects, unlike prospects who play in high school teams where they are options 1, 2, and 3, he actually this season he got loaned to Lietkabelis, which is a Euro Cup team, which means that he not only plays for in the Lithuanian league, he also plays in continental competitions. And when you're an 18-year-old playing in those sort of teams and those sort of environments, it's not like the Victor Wembanyama's, Luka Doncic's of the world are rare, and those are players who get a lot of like usage from an early age. Most of the prospects in Europe, when they get to top teams or teams playing in top tier competitions, they have that same career and role as Murauskas, where it's like he plays mostly off the ball, and what you see in a prospect there is, okay, does he make the most of what he's given? And in the case of Murauskas, I think he's definitely found a role as this kind of strong stretch four at 6'8", who can really shoot the ball, has really great touch. But when you ask him to maybe create in the perimeter in the limited occasions that he had, because again, team construct and the role that he's having for this team, he might not be super advanced. So I would say, has he improved through the season? No, but what I can say is that he has become more effective and that he's made the most of the role he had for Lietkabelis.
Okay, and then as far as Krivas, and can you just is it Motiejus? How do you say his first name?
Yeah, that's I think Lithuanian is a bit. I would say Motiejus. Yeah,
Motiejus Krivas. Okay, we'll go with that for now. And I know you've gotten to know him a little bit, and he was a defensive player of the year in his league, and I know you called him an effective rim protector and rebounder, good floor spacer. You get some bigger guys in college basketball. Arizona's got to play a couple Big Ten teams this year, Michigan State and Wisconsin. As far as defense under the hoop, do you think he's going to be able to meet the challenge when he faces some of those bigger guys in college basketball?
That's a great question. And again, Krivas spent most of the season in the second league, which is certainly not the quality of the first league of Lithuania, but he has seen some minutes in that first league as well. So he's not as battle tested as you maybe would like for a prospect to come year one and make an impact, but he's certainly seen his fair share of minutes against grown men and against size and length, and he has done pretty well in terms of holding his own both on offense and on defense on limited minutes, as most 19-year-olds do in for those teams. What I would say is, for me, considering the amount of time he spent on the second league, it might take him a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. But I think just the size is he's just so big and so long that being also so mobile and so able to convert shots at the rim, it's hard for me not to see him contributing to winning at some point during the season. Might not be the first few weeks of the season, but I think that as he gets more acclimated with the NCAA game and also the rhythm of the game, playing multiple times each week, which is something that prospects in Europe can have a hard time getting accustomed to. But I would be optimistic for him to, being a contributor at least by the end of his freshman year.
All right, Ignacio, here's kind of a random one, and we're going to think back to last year because Arizona got a couple of players in Henri Veesaar and Filip Borovichinen. So if you were to rank the four of them, the two guys they got this year and Veesaar and Borovichinen, as far as the ones that you like the most versus you think will be less productive throughout the rest of their college careers, how would you rank those four?
Going into their college career, I think I would have Veesaar and Murauskas just around the same tier. I thought Veesaar, before coming into Arizona, was also this type of, guy. If everything breaks well for him, he has, for me, every tool and every skill to become an NBA prospect on the long run, just because there's not a lot of guys at his size with his length and his skill set. So Veesaar maybe has the highest ceiling long term. So I would say Veesaar, Murauskas, then Krivas, and then Borovichinen, who I didn't really have a great read coming out of Europe, but it's mostly because I think, if I recall correctly, Borovichinen didn't really have much of a European career. He kind of, I don't want to say came out of nowhere, but he didn't play in the traditional circuits, the ANGTs, U18 tournaments, and FIBA competitions. So I didn't have the best read on him against, that level of competition. So I would have put Borovichinen for coming into Arizona.
Well, we certainly hope that Veesaar steps it up. He had some moments last year, but then became kind of an afterthought, which was a little disappointing. So hopefully he has a better second year with Arizona. All right. So one stereotype about European players is that they are soft. Do you agree with that? And I mean, are these guys, like some people said about Veesaar? Veesaar has a level of toughness, but
yeah,
generally, the stereotype is what it is. Just kind of your thoughts on that.
That's like a multi-layered question. I would say I generally don't like stereotypes for any, country, and you hear it. Certainly, it's not just something that you hear when you talk with people from college or people from the U.S. I think, talking with European scouts and talking with Latin American scouts and Asian scouts and etc. It's like every nationality has kind of its own prejudice attached to it. So I never really trust that. I would say that sometimes the perceived softness of or perceived lack of energy is mostly for the type of basketball culture that some of the prospects come, where maybe if they are, if they demonstrate a lot of excitement and get emotional on the court and etc., they get reprimanded by their coaches. And there are certainly certain countries that don't really like to encourage even creativity in some of the prospects and limit what they do on the court. So I think a lot of times that's the perception, but I think it's because of the basketball culture they come from. But I don't think in most cases, even if there's a cultural basketball difference, I don't think that affects productivity, if that makes any sense. But in short, no, I don't believe European or prospects from anywhere are softer. I just think they demonstrate maybe competitiveness on a different way, just because of the basketball culture that they come from.
What about the speed of the game, Ignacio? Because I think I want to say Azuolas Tubelis commented once, like the biggest adjustment for him was the speed of the college game. Do you find is that an adjustment for 18 and 19-year-olds who come out of Lithuania or other parts of Eastern Europe when they come to play college basketball in America?
That's a really great question. And this year I got more into high school basketball from the US as well, just to understand more and be more trained in recognizing the difference between the basketball that we see played in Europe and the basketball that it's mostly played in high school, and 90% or 80% of those prospects end up making up the college roster. So there's a more clear path from high school type basketball to college type basketball. I would say yes, there's kind of an adjustment. I would say because in European basketball, most teams, and again, it's a part of basketball culture, there's a lot of half court offense, a lot of let's play 24 seconds, let's slow it down, let's look at the coach, let's see what play he calls. And not every country, not every club, not every coach encourages creativity. While you watch a high school basketball game, and yes, there are certain coaches and certain teams that run really detailed half-court offenses with a lot of set plays and a lot of concepts, but you watch most of the teams and they just make stuff up on the fly. And so I believe that maybe it's not so much the speed of the game, but it's the culture shock of seeing yourself on the court and not having a coach to look at or a play that he's calling and say, okay, I just have to develop new basketball instincts.
It's a little more free-flowing, you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. You put everything I said in the past 90 seconds in 2 words, but yeah, it's definitely more free-flowing, and there's a culture shock that I would say most, if not all, of players coming from overseas go through.
All right. My last question for Ignacio, and this has been educational, and we really do appreciate it. There's obviously been a big influx of European talent and that's come to America, both at the collegiate and the NBA levels already. Do you see that increasing, like percentage-wise, over the next several years? Is like Tommy Lloyd maybe kind of ahead of the game as far as like what's coming to college basketball in the NBA?
Yeah, another great question. I would say that if we take a look at the guys committing this year to college, we're seeing probably the most deep class of international players committing to college. Now, is it the most deep class in terms of overall talent? No. So what's the difference? The difference is that guys who used to stay overseas and maybe attempted to play for some teams in Europe, some lesser teams, or play for their teams in second divisions and etc., now are making their way to college. Murauskas is a case where you have a guy that's fringe NBA, and he ends up going to college instead of staying with his Lithuanian league and Eurocup team. Jan Bide just committed to UCLA today. Right. And Bide is not really one of my favorite prospects, but a lot of people see him as an NBA prospect next year, and he could have played in 90% of European teams, and he ends up going to UCLA. So you have a ton of the guys, and I would say for Arizona, Tuvelis was one of those cases where I always thought he was kind of a fringe NBA guy, and he ends up, instead of staying in Lithuania, he ends up going to Arizona. So we're seeing a trend of more and more players going to college instead of staying in their home countries. And I think that's only going to grow bigger, especially if they find a way to get NIL benefits to international players. Once that door opens, I assume, and knowing European and international agents, if that door opens, it's going to be 1-2 players staying in Europe and the rest are going to come over.
Yeah.
So if that ever happens, it's only going to grow bigger, I would say.
Well, that's good that Tommy Lloyd's getting ahead of it. And certainly, I guess he's putting that footprint out there, which is important. All right, Ignacio, this has been great info. And as I mentioned at the start, people can find you on Twitter. But where else? Where can our audience find your content, which is outstanding?
So, again, thank you so much for the invite. I write for 2 outlets at the moment. Draft Digest is the place in Sports Illustrated where we cover the draft. So it's si.com/NBA/draft, or find Draft Digest on Twitter. And also for Pro Insight is a scouting service, and we deal with a lot of prospects coming 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the pipeline. The site was covering an event where there's 2029 prospects this weekend, so we're trying to get ahead of the curve. So if you're interested in what's coming next, we got you covered for sure.
Well, we certainly learned a lot tonight, and thank you so much for coming on with us. And the way that Arizona's recruiting, I have a feeling we'll be talking to you again sooner than later. Thanks again, Ignacio.
Thank you so much, guys.
Really cool to talk to Ignacio. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as Shane and I did. Shane, what did you get most out of it?
Great stuff. I mean, fewer guys you would think know more about the two guys coming from Lithuania than him. And it was interesting hearing him say that, it wasn't so much the speed of the game that throws off some of the European guys who come to play college basketball, but it's more the free flow. It's like they have to learn to freelance a little bit more. They get that opportunity there, whereas they're kind of maybe pigeonholed a little bit more, or not pigeon. That's not the right term, but you know what I'm trying to say. Like they really have to follow the coach's script, and they're not allowed to be as creative as maybe some of the college guys are. So I think maybe that's a benefit for someone like Murauskas, who Ignacio said could have gone to the NBA draft, could have declared for the draft instead of coming to the college level. Maybe playing at the college level for a year, playing the American style of basketball will help prep him for the NBA draft. And hopefully, if he ends up being pretty good at Arizona, hopefully it'll be more than a year, but we'll have to wait and see.
2 years. Hey, but this is the year I want us to be really good. Final Four, Shane.
I know.
Final Four in Arizona or bust. Not getting my tickets just yet. All right. Talk about something that's going on in Arizona right now. Is the Pac-12 baseball tournament. So Arizona, we're recording this on Wednesday afternoon after Arizona beat Oregon State 13-12 and advanced to the semifinals on Friday. Now, we don't know who they're going to play yet as of the time of this recording, but I mean, really exciting game. The offense works. The pitching has been a disaster. I mean,
same as it's been,
all season. So what does Arizona need to do, in your opinion, to make the NCAA tournament? If they make the championship game, is that enough, in your opinion, considering they've gotten hot at the end of the year?
Yeah, well, and first of all, I was certain they're going to blow that game against Oregon State because they're up 12-8. Oregon State comes back and ties it. They've got runners at the corners with no outs in the ninth. You think, okay, they're going to lose this game like 17-12, and then they get out of it and then get the winning run with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth. So congrats to Chip Hale and those guys. I'm glad to see them finish the season strong. Entering this game, the game against Oregon State, Arizona had an RPI of 51. Which actually was 3 spots higher than ASU, which before their game against ASU, because they beat ASU to get to Oregon State, ASU was actually projected as the last team in the regionals per Baseball America. So you would think if Arizona's ahead of them in RPI, maybe they'd have a shot. Now their Pac-12 record stinks. They're 12-18. So the record, the game, the win over Oregon State, which had an RPI of 30, is very impressive. If they get one more, say against Stanford, that'd be even more impressive. But to get to regionals, I think they have to paraphrase Jake Taylor. They got to win the whole effing thing. I think they got to win the whole. Unfortunately, that conference record just sticks out like a sore thumb.
I think if they were to win on Friday night, I think we can make a legitimate argument. Now, you and I won't be on the air in between now and then, so we'll find out. I would still say that the chances of Arizona getting in are probably closer to 25% than they are 75%.
Yeah.
But I think now we can at least start talking. This is a team that's heating up at the right moment. The bats are great. I mean, McGlatry, Chase Davis has been great. Tony Bullard,
Kiko
Rivero.
Romero.
I mean, walking off with that today. Great. We'll see. I'm still not buying it, but if they get in, I might change my tune a little bit on Chip Hale.
Yeah,
a little bit.
And I know in Baseball America's projections aren't gospel, but they're usually pretty accurate. And going into the Pac-12 tournament, Arizona wasn't even on their list of first 4 out or next 4 out. So can they climb that ladder? And remember, there's been a lot of baseball games played already. There's twice as many baseball games at this point as basketball games. So one game isn't going to move the needle as much as it is in basketball. With that said, Arizona moved up 4 spots in RPI after beating ASU. I'm sure they're going to move up more.
What's their RPI right now?
51. That's up from 55 the day before. Just a couple spots behind USC, which I think is also projected to be pretty solidly in. But that 12-18 conference record, it's tough. Now, if they beat Oregon State, if they go beat, say, Stanford and lose in the championship game, maybe that'll be enough. But they're just fair or not, the selection committee, they're going to look at that 12-18 conference record and say, I don't know if we can put these guys in without an automatic.
Unless they look at it and say, listen, the Pac-12 was a very strong baseball conference,
always
like the SEC. Yeah. So, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they played a really difficult schedule, whereas some of these teams beat up on, nobodies in their conferences. Yeah. So I guess we'll find out. I'm still going to say they're out, but I think a win on Friday and Saturday would be really interesting.
I'll tell you what, if they're the kind of team that got in, you remember Ole Miss last year?
They beat Arizona twice and knocked them out.
Right. They snuck in and then they went on and ran roughshod over everyone else. And that's kind of how I'm not saying Arizona is going to do that, but it's kind of what Andy Lopez's team did back in 2012.
The pitching isn't there.
I know. I'm just saying they're not going to be a team anyone's 12. There's not if they get in, they're not going to be a team that anyone's going to want to play because
the offense is really good. Yeah. The offense is really good. The pitching stinks. Yeah. I mean, you're going to have to win like you did today, 13-12 and hold your, what's in every, good luck with that.
Absolutely.
All right. So last topic here, John Wilner of the Bay Area News put out a quarterback room list the other week. And he has Washington with Michael Penix, number 1 in the conference, Caleb Williams, number 2, with including backups, which I'm not sure I agree with, but okay. 3 is Oregon and Bo Nix. Okay, fine. I think those 3 are undisputed. Cam Rising in Utah is 5th, which I would put ahead of Oregon State with DJ Uiagalelei, who from Clemson, who wasn't very good.
I'm so glad you pronounced that, and I didn't.
Yeah, good luck with that. He has UCLA 6th with a bunch of guys I don't even know who they are. ASU 7th, with a Notre Dame transfer, a BYU transfer, a freshman who got didn't take Florida's NIL money, and Trenton Bourguet, and Arizona 8th with Jaden DeLora, Noah Fafita, who's a 4-star, and Braden Dorman, who's a 4-star.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but to me, looking at this list, Shane, Arizona has a top 6, if not higher, quarterback room in the conference. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. I'm kind of like my first reaction was like, what? How could they possibly be 8th? But you look at it, certainly the top 3 you can't really dispute.
No,
Oregon State I think is high. I actually put Arizona higher than them.
DJ has not shown anything.
No, he hasn't. He's going off the name and the potential
and the ratings out of high school, which at this point are useless.
UCLA, not much experience there, a lot of potential, but here's the thing, you could say with Arizona, okay, they've got 2 guys who really haven't played yet. Potential. They haven't played yet. Maybe that's why you rank them as low as you have. But then UCLA is ranked higher than Arizona, presumably because of the potential. So there's that. ASU, maybe in terms of depth or a little bit. I mean, look, the Territorial Cup game, Trenton Bourguet was the best quarterback on the field. With that said, I would still rather have Jaden DeLora than Trenton Bourguet this season. So maybe a little low. I'm not going to argue with it too much. My biggest takeaway is Oregon State at number 4 is way too high.
I would put Arizona at number 5 in the conference, Washington, USC, and Oregon. Probably go USC 1, Washington 2, Oregon 3, Utah with Cam Rising 4. I'd put Arizona 5, and then probably UCLA and Oregon State right there. ASU, beyond that. You're forgetting about, Cam Ward in Washington State.
Yeah.
Another good player who played well against Arizona. Colorado has Deion Sanders' kid, who knows how good he is from Jackson State. Cal and Stanford are absolute disasters. So don't expect much from the Bay Area schools there. I just saw this list, and Arizona at number 8 just did not make any sense to me. So I wanted to get that in there.
Yeah, I would say Arizona and Washington State are probably the 2 that I might move up a little. I don't know number 5, but probably move up those guys. And then Oregon State, I would bump down at least a couple spots.
Well, I also want to congratulate the women's golf team. They made a run, did not make the final 8, but they gave it a good run. And, we appreciated their success. They're always good. Laura Ianello does a great job with that. So let's hope baseball can keep things going and give us another week to talk about. We'll be talking baseball predictions early next week. If not, who knows what conference Arizona will be in the coming weeks. So a lot going on, and another fun show. Thanks to Ignacio Rissotto for joining us. Great insight, Shane, as always. So for Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.